For most of my life, I believed forgiveness was something you gave to other people, the ones who hurt you, abandoned you, disappointed you. I never imagined the hardest person to forgive would be the one I saw in the mirror every morning. My name is Evelyn, and I'm 73 years old. And for nearly all those years, I carried a quiet resentment toward myself that I didn't fully understand until very recently. The strange thing is, from the outside, my life probably looked ordinary, maybe even good. I was married for 41 years. I raised 2 children who grew into decent people. I worked hard, kept the house together, showed up when people needed me. I wasn't reckless. I wasn't cruel. I did what most people would call my best. But underneath all of that, there was a voice inside me that never softened. I can still remember how early it started. I was maybe 9 or 10 when I first became aware that mistakes seemed to stay with me longer than they stayed with other people. If I said something embarrassing at school, I would replay it for weeks. If my mother looked disappointed in me, even briefly, I carried the feeling like a stain. My father believed criticism built character. He wasn't a violent man, and he provided for us, but praise was rare in our home. If I brought home a report card with all A's and 1 B, the B became the conversation. If I cleaned the kitchen but forgot 1 dish in the sink, that dish somehow erased everything else. As a little girl, you don't question those patterns. You absorb them. You begin to believe love is something you earn by avoiding mistakes. So I became careful. Careful with words, careful with emotions, careful not to inconvenience anyone. I learned how to apologize quickly, even when I wasn't sure I'd done something wrong. I learned how to carry guilt preemptively, almost like a habit. And over time, that habit became my inner voice. By the time I was a young woman, I looked composed on the outside, but inside, I was exhausted from trying to stay ahead of my own disappointment. I compared myself constantly. Other women seemed more confident, more relaxed, more deserving somehow. I thought everyone else had received a handbook for life that I had somehow missed. When I met my husband, Daniel, I thought marriage might quiet that voice. He was steady and warm in ways my father never was. He complimented me easily. He told me I worried too much. And for a while, being loved by someone kind felt almost unfamiliar. But self-judgment has a way of surviving even inside love. If Daniel came home quiet after work, I assumed I had done something wrong. If we argued, even over small things, I carried the shame for days. I became very skilled at blaming myself before anyone else could. I remember one night in particular. I must have been around 36. The children were asleep upstairs, and Daniel and I had a disagreement about money. Nothing dramatic, just ordinary stress. But after he went to bed, I stayed in the kitchen alone for almost an hour, sitting at the table in the dark, silently listing every way I had failed as a wife, a mother, a person. That was how I lived for decades. Whenever something painful happened, I instinctively turned against myself first, even when life simply unfolded the way life does. If a friendship faded, I assumed I wasn't enough. If one of my children struggled, I searched for where I had failed them. When my mother became ill near the end of her life, I spent years replaying every impatient moment I'd ever had with her, convincing myself I had been a terrible daughter. The strange part is, no one around me would have described me the way I described myself privately. Friends came to me for comfort. My children trusted me. People often said I was gentle, and yet inside my own mind, I lived with someone merciless. I didn't know there was another way to be. When Daniel died 12 years ago, the silence in the house became unbearable at first. Not just because I missed him, but because there was nothing left to drown out my thoughts. No routines to hide inside. No constant caregiving. Just me, moving through quiet rooms with a lifetime of unresolved feelings, following close behind. Grief does something strange to time. It collapses it. Old memories begin sitting beside present ones. And during those years after his death, I found myself revisiting parts of my life I had spent decades avoiding. Not dramatic moments necessarily, small ones. The time I snapped at my daughter because I was overwhelmed and saw her face fall. The afternoon I ignored Daniel's excitement about something trivial because I was too distracted worrying about bills. The years I spent emotionally absent while physically present because anxiety consumed so much of my attention. I became a collector of evidence against myself, and aging made it harder to escape. When you're younger, there's always the illusion that you'll eventually become different, more healed, more certain, more worthy somehow. But in your 70s, you begin understanding that you are not auditioning for another life. This is the life. These are the memories you carry forward. That realization frightened me more than I can explain. I remember standing in front of the bathroom mirror one morning shortly after my 72nd birthday. Nothing dramatic had happened. It was an ordinary day. But I looked at my face, at the lines around my eyes, at the softness age had brought to me, and I felt this sudden wave of sadness for the woman staring back at me, not because she was old, because she was tired. Tired from spending an entire lifetime under constant internal judgment. And for the first time, instead of criticizing myself for feeling that way, I asked a different question, one I had somehow never asked before. What if I deserved some compassion too? I know that sounds simple, maybe even obvious. But when you've spent 70 years believing your value depends on perfection, compassion can feel almost uncomfortable at first, like wearing clothes that don't quite fit yet. I started noticing how cruel my inner voice actually was. I paid attention to the language I used toward myself, and honestly, it shocked me. I would forgive strangers more easily than I forgave myself for being human. If a friend forgot to call me back, I understood. If I forgot something, I called myself useless. If someone else made a mistake, I saw context, exhaustion, complexity. If I made one, I saw failure. And once I saw it clearly, I couldn't unsee it. Around that same time, my granddaughter came to visit. She was 16 then, sitting at my kitchen counter one afternoon, crying over a mistake she'd made at school. I remember how gently I spoke to her. I told her she was still worthy of love even when she disappointed herself. I told her mistakes were part of being alive. And in the middle of comforting her, I had this almost painful realization. I had spent my whole life offering kindness to others while withholding it from myself. Something shifted in me after that. Not all at once. Forgiveness is quieter than people imagine. It isn't a single moment where everything suddenly feels healed. At least it wasn't for me. It was gradual. More like loosening your grip on something heavy you've carried so long, you forgot it was there. I began speaking to myself differently, gently correcting the old voice when it appeared, reminding myself that regret and self-punishment are not the same thing. One can teach you, the other only keeps you trapped. I also started allowing myself to remember my life more honestly, not as a courtroom filled with evidence against me, but as the story of a flawed human being who tried, often imperfectly, to love people well. I began remembering the good things too. the nights I stayed awake beside a sick child, the years Daniel and I laughed ourselves breathless over nothing important, the meals, the holidays, the ordinary acts of care that quietly built a life. For so long, I had edited my memories through the lens of shame. I finally realized I was allowed to see the full picture. At 73, I still have regrets. I still think about moments I wish I had handled differently. I suspect that never fully disappears if you have a conscience. But regret feels very different now that it is no longer tied to hatred. I can acknowledge my mistakes without turning myself into one. And maybe that's what forgiveness truly is. Not pretending the past was perfect, not excusing harm, but releasing the belief that your worst moments deserve permanent ownership over your identity. I wasted so many years believing I had to earn rest, earn love, earn softness. I didn't understand that human beings are not meant to survive under endless self-condemnation. Sometimes I think about the younger version of myself, that anxious little girl trying so hard to avoid disappointing everyone, and I feel tenderness now instead of frustration. She was doing the best she could with what she understood at the time. She thought being hard on herself would protect her somehow. She thought if she criticized herself first, the world's judgment might hurt less. But life doesn't become lighter when you spend decades punishing yourself. It only becomes smaller. I see that now in ways I couldn't before. In these later years, I've started paying attention to simple things differently. The sound of rain against the windows in the morning. A phone call from my daughter that lasts longer than expected. The feeling of sunlight coming through the kitchen curtains while I wash dishes. For most of my life, even peaceful moments carried tension underneath them, because my mind was always busy measuring, correcting, regretting. I don't live that way quite as much anymore. That doesn't mean I've become endlessly confident or perfectly healed. There are still mornings when the old voice returns out of habit. Sometimes I still replay conversations before bed. Sometimes I still feel the familiar pull toward guilt even when none is necessary. But now, when that happens, I pause long enough to ask myself something I never would have asked before. Would I speak this way to someone I love? And the answer is almost always no. So I try again. I think many people reach old age carrying invisible trials that no one else fully sees. Some carry resentment toward parents, some toward former partners, some toward the world itself. But there are also those of us carrying resentment toward ourselves so quietly and constantly that it begins to feel normal. That kind of suffering is hard to explain because from the outside, life may appear completely functional. You go to work, raise children, smile at neighbors, attend birthdays and funerals and anniversaries. You keep moving. Meanwhile, inside your own mind, there is never any rest. I wish I had understood earlier that self-forgiveness is not selfishness. I confused those two things for years. I thought being gentle with myself meant becoming lazy or careless or self-absorbed. But I've learned the opposite is true. People who hate themselves rarely become better through hatred. They only become more afraid. And fear changes the shape of a life. It makes you apologize for taking up space. It makes you distrust kindness. It makes you hide parts of yourself because you assume they are too flawed to deserve acceptance. It makes joy feel temporary and mistakes feel permanent. I know this because I lived that way for most of my life. There's one memory I return to often now, a small memory, but an important one. A few years before Daniel died, we were sitting on the back porch one evening after dinner. The air was warm, and he was watching the sky darken while I worried aloud about something I had said earlier that day to a friend. I kept going on about how foolish I sounded, how I should have handled the conversation differently. And I remember Daniel looking at me very quietly before saying, "Evelyn, you speak about yourself like someone who's impossible to forgive." At the time, I brushed it aside. I laughed nervously and changed the subject. But after he was gone, those words stayed with me. Impossible to forgive. That was exactly how I had treated myself. As though every mistake needed to remain active forever. As though mercy was something meant for other people, but not for me. I wish I could tell Daniel now that I finally understand what he saw all those years ago. I wish I could tell him I'm trying to live differently. Not perfectly, just more kindly. Sometimes, late at night, I sit quietly in my living room and think about how many people are probably carrying this same burden without realizing it. Especially people from my generation. We were taught endurance, responsibility, sacrifice. But many of us were never taught how to offer ourselves compassion without guilt attached to it. So we became caretakers of everyone except ourselves. And after enough years, that imbalance leaves a mark. If you spend your whole life believing your worth depends on never failing, you eventually become afraid of your own humanity. You stop seeing yourself as a person and start seeing yourself as a collection of mistakes to manage. That is a lonely way to live. The strange thing is, forgiving myself has actually made me more honest, not less. I no longer need to defend every choice I made or pretend I did everything right. I can admit where I failed people. I can apologize sincerely when needed. But I no longer believe my failures cancel out my entire existence. There's freedom in that. Real freedom. Not the loud kind people talk about in books or speeches, but a quiet freedom. The kind that lets you sit alone with your memories without feeling constantly attacked by them. At 73, I have finally started feeling at home inside my own life. And maybe that sounds small to some people, but it feels enormous to me. Because for decades, no matter where I went, I carried an invisible tension inside myself. Even during happy moments, even during love. There was always this feeling that I had fallen short somehow, that I needed to improve before I could fully rest. I don't want to spend whatever years I have left living that way anymore. I want to speak more gently to the woman who survived all those years trying her best. I want to stop rewriting my life as a story of inadequacy when it was, in truth, the story of an ordinary human being doing what humans do, loving imperfectly, grieving imperfectly, learning slowly. Maybe that's enough. Actually, I think it is enough. If you're listening to me right now, and you recognize even a small part of yourself in this story, I hope you consider the possibility that the person you've been fighting all these years may not deserve such relentless punishment. You are allowed to regret things and still deserve peace. You are allowed to outgrow the cruel voice you learned in childhood. And you are allowed to become softer with yourself, even now, even after everything. Especially after everything. I used to believe forgiveness was something distant and dramatic. Now I think it often begins very quietly. In the way you speak to yourself when no one else can hear. In the moments you choose understanding instead of condemnation. In the decision to stop treating your humanity like a crime. At 73, I finally forgave the one person I could never escape. Myself. And for the first time in a very long while, the world feels a little lighter to carry. If my story meant something to you tonight, I hope you'll carry one small thing with you. Speak to yourself with the same kindness you so easily give to others. Life becomes lighter when we stop treating our own hearts like enemies. And if you'd like to hear more quiet stories about aging, love, regret, healing, and the wisdom that only time can teach, I invite you to subscribe and spend a little more time with us here. You are always welcome.